hún freki rynna. Fjöld veit hún freyða og framsjörg lengra. Ragnar og kröm sig tívar, ser hon uppkomma öðr og sinni. Jörð og rægið gröna. Fodlar, forsar, flygrar nývir. Sáar og fjalli fiska veiðir. Sá ser hún standa sólu fegra. Gulli þagðan nógum leið. Þar skúlódig var drottir byggja. Aldur daga indis njóta. Ljóts bið ég allar helgar kindir. Meiri og minni mögu heimdalar. Vilt vad jeg val föder vel fyr telja. Fornspjöld fyra þá fremst mann. Hár var allað það rýmir byggði. Vara sannur nje sær nje svala Soltör sortna sig follimar. Kvörv av himni heiðar stjörnur. Gæsar ræmi við aldrna. Lækrár
And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Geekwatch, a subsidiary of the monastery, the open bar of the internet, and publicly bankrolled by Zadari Enterprises, because we believe in bringing your alcohol level to 10,000%, because our beer is 10 times better than Zaya.
I can attest to that. The Zadari spec confirms.
To which some of you may ask, but Zaya Enterprises doesn't make beer. Exactly. And we've got a full house tonight. We have not one, not two, not three, not four, not five, not six, not even seven, but 8 of my good brothers here. We have the god of memes and the longtime Sonic champion, good brother Akira. We have the living stack of comics and the man who is miraculously not late and gay this week, good brother Doku.
Yeah, we know it's the end of the world for him to be here this time.
Welcome to 2020.
Oh, please. The end of the world, the apocalypse, the end is nigh. Oh, please. I live up north.
I promise I had nothing to do with the frogs or the locusts.
At least he's not the one turning the frickin' frogs gay this time.
Oh, god damn it. Let's just go.
If it ends, look, Shades, I hate to say this, but if it ends up raining frogs, I'm just going to mail all of them to Lady K.
So you have chosen death.
I'm saying what's going to happen is she's going to try and kill me, and then I'm going to throw frogs as a distraction.
Who likes Cajun?
Moving on.
Yep. We have Geekwatch's own intercontinental champion, and the man who's probably laughing at the Leafs as much as I do. Good brother Matty.
You missed one.
Oh yeah, I did miss one. I missed the living incarnation of Necrom's watch. Good brother Flutter. we have the man behind the shades, the man who does not wear, as the song goes, cheap sunglasses. Good brother Shades.
Little secret for you. They are cheap.
Well then the song ends up being more apropos.
Hey. So someone listened to Toku memes earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And we have the chief operating officer and owner of Zadari Enterprises, good brother Xanatrix.
Yo.
And last but not least, we have the man who does not need any green candles, good brother Zeltrex.
Yeah, at least my powers don't get taken away by a fucking green candle. Hi, Tommy. How you doing?
We'll get to him.
Yep. So, I find it a bit fortuitous that this is going to be the 13th episode of Geekwatch, and we are discussing something that has so much bad karma.
Oh yeah.
So,
a certain black cat once said, "Well, you know what they say, SpaghettiOs."
Good
call.
So taking that into account, this week we are tackling the infamously fucking infamous Power/Rangers short film. Much like Linkara, I will not acknowledge it as a fan film because you need to actually be a fan. Now,
Yeah.
I had found out about it about a week late when everybody was already making this or that hot take on the project. And that may have been to my benefit because I was able to see what the initial reactions were. And I distinctly remember getting into a lengthy argument with friend of the show, good brother Nurgle, because of the fact that at the time he and I were on opposite ends of it. because he really liked it. I didn't. In fact, I vehemently disliked it. But that was, I want to say, what, 5 years ago?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Thereabouts, yeah.
I feel like enough time has passed to do a re-examination of both it and all the circumstances surrounding the project. Now, obviously, the guy behind it is doing quite well for himself lately, because shortly after this, he did the Castlevania. He helped write and direct the Castlevania anime, which
him?
did.
That's Tony
Sean.
Sarkar.
Yeah, Sean Carr, that was the same guy.
Still need to watch that show.
His next project is gonna be Blood of Zeus,
Oh
which
that's
which looks very promising. I would say it's a bit cliche to have the main character be the son of Zeus, but I feel like I have to use that Blight meme of, do you have any idea how little that narrows it down?
Yeah.
Yeah, Zeus wasn't exactly a one-woman kind of guy.
No.
Much to his chagrin whenever Hera found out.
Yeah. Anyway.
Which was, most of the time. There's the reason that one of the origin stories of Echo is that Zeus was basically punishing her for having seen one of his dalliances. Or one of the origin stories for Medusa was that he had Artemis turn her into a Gorgon to keep her quiet about one of his dalliances. Or, if I kept listing, we'd be here for the next 3 years.
Yeah, pretty much.
Let's
Minimum.
something else to keep in mind is that Zeus is Hercules' father and grandfather.
Yes.
And
Just
Zeus?
Just remember it.
and Zeus is a terrible professional wrestler. There, I've said it.
God damn it, Matt. There's your one. That's your one.
Hey, let me recover this one by retorting that was the job he had to do in order to get enough cred so he could apply for president of Earth.
Very true.
I will go ahead and drink for movie reference because it is appropriate to current year.
Yes.
I flipped a coin whether or not I was going to reference Friday or reference the Fifth Element. Coin came up head, so Fifth Element it is.
Well, first drink of the night. Cheers.
I was hoping for Friday.
The dice gods were not on your side, Akira, which I realize is a moot point because the dice gods are on nobody's side.
The only time the dice gods are on
no
the
mercy.
side is when you put them
Amen.
in the oven first.
Cue Goblin Slayer music.
Yes. And then Michael in the chat saying, I think it runs in the family because I'm pretty sure Heracles, aka Hercules, also had sex with his nephew. I'm acknowledging that, and then I'm moving on because I don't want to think about it.
No.
Look,
Carlin
Carlin said it best. There's a whole lot of fucking going on.
Exact.
Moving on. We're on rails, guys. Rails.
So
That was quick.
I do think a lot of us. I think now. I am no stranger to people trying to do darker attempts or darker parodies of Power Rangers. After all, there was that whole Mightily Murdered thing a few years before that, and
Oh yeah, that comic.
there was the cringe fest that was the Emo Rangers thing.
Oh god, that thing.
That was cringy and wonderful and everything that Power Rangers is. It was almost perfect.
And then to mention a golden parody, which was both a comedy and at some parts very dark, was anything Ego Raptor did with Super Sentai parodies back then.
Oh yeah, back when Ego Raptor still had his balls.
Yeah, back before
Oh!
Mortimer turned him into a raging woke tard.
Yeah.
And he wasn't just doing card openings. Ugh.
You know, back when he was actually still teamed up with JonTron, all those fun things.
Yeah.
Although
Anyway.
John's better without him.
Anyway.
Moving on.
Yeah. Now when it came to the actual short film, I will give it credit for a few things. Like as far as actual production, they did a very good job.
Holy shit, they did.
Yeah. I do think that there's a lot of people who do fan films. The thing that they learned very quickly is find ways to cheat like you're an anime director. And I think doing a interrogation style framing device is an excellent example of doing that kind of cheating. Now, as we've already established, Adi Shankar is not a fan. He doesn't even like Power Rangers. But according to the interview he did with Hitflix years ago, his intent was to try and parody people who would take these what he referred to as silly childlike IPs and put a darker spin on them. And it's not like there wasn't a precedent for that, because does anybody here remember There Will Be Brawl?
Oh, yeah. Oh, I remember that. That was Matthew Mercer back before he became known for Critical Role.
Mm-hmm. And there's been of course that, and there's obviously been attempts to try and darken, but I remember reading the take that Joshua the Anarchist had on the matter when he was writing for the Agony Booth, and the thing that he compared it to was Fight Club.
I can kind of see it.
The reason why he made that comparison is that Fight Club is deconstructing the same kind of machismo power fantasy it claims to endorse. But the problem is, and this is what he was trying to highlight, it did its job too well, to the point where people were completely unaware that it was trying to be a parody and took it straight.
Yeah, it was a situation where a semi-death of the author occurred at the time. And I would say that Power/Rangers is the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There were a lot of people who saw Power/Rangers and said, "This is what a mature Power Rangers movie should be."
And I just stood back and went,
about that.
ah!
Now, I would like to say that while Adi Shankar may not be a fan of Power Rangers and of Super Sentai, there are clearly people somewhere on this production crew who are.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because you look at this, and they had every, like, there was a lot of references. It understood the lore of Power Rangers. It had mentioned stuff like the Machine Empire. You had characters that normally you wouldn't think of. Like, I'm looking at the cast list. You had Divatox, Scorpina, and a couple of others in there that, unless you understood Power Rangers, you would have never thought to put them in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'd say that would you consider this a case of accidental genius?
Yeah, I think that's a good way of putting it.
Yeah, partially.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Personally, I also think that Adi Shankar's derision of Power Rangers and Super Sentai as a children's only IP is the type of derision that is probably responsible for Toei trying to force Super Sentai to become more child friendly in recent years.
I would contest that. We talked about this a few weeks ago when we did the Drunken Sailor episode.
Yeah,
But I would say it's a case of their attempts to do that are more of them recoiling because they think that because they don't fully estimate their audience, and they still, and for whatever reason they still think that the template to go on is Car Ranger.
which was itself a parody.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. When it's actually Jetman.
Some in chat they're saying look at RPM. You don't even have to look at RPM. You can look at Deca Ranger itself, or SPD in Power Rangers over here.
Mm-hmm.
Both are actually pretty dark on their own right. SPD even more dark than its source material. And it was so liked by Japan that they had it redubbed into Japanese.
Yeah,
By the original actors.
by the original Sentai actors.
Exactly.
That's the thing is that for a legit, true, mature Power Rangers, you know, even though it wasn't perfect, I'd say the 2017 movie hit the nail on the head. It had its lighthearted moments, it had its fun moments, but it took itself a lot more seriously, and it felt mature. It wasn't perfect; it had its flaws. None of us will deny that, but I think it came closer to what we actually wanted for a darker, more mature Power Rangers than what this was going for. This went for the absolute extreme. And that was the kind of the point.
Yeah. What I see out of this is as far as the attempt was to mock the whole idea that, and this is something that is not a stranger to this, especially as a survivor of the dark age of comics as I am, of this idea that darkness equals and being more quote unquote adult equals a more mature type of or more equals maturity for one matter, and two, that being more quote unquote mature is a mark of the quality of a work. And this is something that I've been trying to examine for the longest time about why people have this fixation on that particular approach. And it's not limited to Go ahead.
I might have some insight on this. I think the thing is that it's a case of peer pressure. A lot of people don't want to admit that they watched something that was made for kids. If it looks childish, then it makes you look unintelligent, makes you look dumb for wanting to watch a kid's show. And thus, so it's created this stigma of, oh, you watch that kiddie shit? It's that kind of mentality that, so when they see something that's grim dark and it's super gritty and, you know, it looks badass, even if it's stupid as all hell when you actually break it down, if it looks badass, that's all that matters. It's a dumb mentality, and I vehemently against it. But that is the mentality the casual outsider audience tends to see. When you see Power Rangers, and by extension Sentai, it's silly. It is cheesy as shit, and it is clearly meant for a younger audience. Mm-hmm. So, rainbow-colored spandex. Cue Dr. K joke here. But you see that, and you see rubber-suited monsters, these ridiculously hard-to-move-around in robots. Like, it looks dumb as shit. But what most casual fans don't see is the mature storytelling. You know, we see some seasons, and I stress some, that some seasons can be absolutely dumb.
Yes.
But a lot of the better seasons, In Space, SPD, RPM, there's some seriously mature shit going on here. RPM, I think, is the greatest example of the balance of it. Because it had silly moments like the twins, Jen and Gemma.
Mm-hmm.
But then you look at Dr. K's backstory and realize she was like abducted by this mysterious group as a child, raised to create weapons of mass destruction, and her escape led to the destruction of the entire fucking planet.
Yeah,
You
she
know,
pretty much caused the fucking apocalypse.
Exactly. And not only that, you see her dealing with that throughout the series. The pain she's had to carry, that her genius caused so much death and pain. That is a principal part of her character. That is mature storytelling. But it's layered underneath this guise of being silly and goofy. A lot of that because the Sentai was indeed silly and goofy.
The thing that will always make me laugh is the writer involved with the whole thing who had put up that whole pitch about how he could get it to appeal to an older audience regardless of the footage, and then he gets that footage and
he's like, holy shit, what have I got myself into?
I was like, are those motherfucking eyeballs on the swords?
Bring that up.
I think that the explanation for why people want dark and gritty is even simpler than that, Shades. Especially concerning, again, a quote-unquote children's show such as Power Rangers or Super Sentai. It's not even peer pressure. A lot of people look back on things they liked as children and cringe at their own likes and dislikes, not from any outside pressure, but just because they themselves perceive it to just be a hallmark of immaturity in general.
And
you know what?
And
you're not wrong.
The grimdark thing can be part of it, but beyond that,
it's this need to get away from that.
It's really more a self-castigation because they can't just accept that at one point they were awkward, they were childish.
Yeah, and whenever this kind of thing comes up, there is a quote from one of C.S. Lewis's books, and I want to make clear I think C.S. Lewis is massively overrated as a philosopher, but there's one thing that he said that I've cited for years, and I believe this was from God in the Dock. Quote, "Critics who treat adult as a term of approval instead of a merely descriptive term cannot be adult themselves. To be concerned about being grown up, to admire the grown up because it is grown up, to blush at the suspicion of being childish. These things are the marks of childhood and adolescence, and in childhood and adolescence they are, in moderation, healthy symptoms. Young things ought to want to grow, but to carry on into middle life or even into early manhood, this concern about being adult is a mark of really arrested development. When I was 10, I read fairy tales in secret and would have been ashamed if I had been found doing so. Now that I am 50, I read them openly. When I became a man, I put away childish things, including the fear of childishness and the desire to be very grown up."
And that's exactly it. I think I probably got evaporated.
You were on the right track. You were on the right track. And actually, allow me to get personal for a minute because as you guys were saying this, I thought back to my own past, my own life. And I remember when I first started doing my anime reviews, I was in the same boat. Like, yeah, I mean, I watched some less dark stuff, but I remember like one of my favorite anime back in the day was freaking Death Note. You know, a series that involved killing people with a magic notebook.
The series that actually ends at episode 25 and not episode 36 because those last episodes don't exist.
You were absolutely correct, Xanatrix. I agree wholeheartedly. But yeah, like back then, that was my thing. I liked those more mature, darker stories. But now I've reached a point in my life where that doesn't affect me. I don't think that way anymore. I'm watching stuff that is, just silly and cheesy, goofy. I'm watching stuff like Hensky, for fuck's sake. And if you know what Hensky is, you understand what I'm getting at here. Like shit like that.
Boy, I do.
Yeah, we all do. Most of us here do. But that's my point. Is like now I don't let my own reservations about what people perceive me as enjoying bother me, or what I think myself is like. I don't care if it's good. It's good. Who gives a shit?
Yeah.
Well, and that's my exact point. There's a phase I've seen almost universally every person I've ever met go through, regardless of interests, regardless of their preferences for consumption of entertainment material. There's materials they consumed when they were younger children, prepubescent, that they find themselves ashamed about, distancing themselves from, disavowing in their teenage years.
Yeah.
I'm sure on the subject of Super Sentai and Power Rangers, more than one of us in here during those teen years just said, "No, I never watched Power Rangers. Fuck that. That shit's for kids." And that's just something that people went through.
Mm-hmm.
But around, for me, 17, I just started watching it again, and everything Toko at that point, because around 17 it was really starting to get the fan subbing community was really starting to springboard. And when people are like, "Are you watching that kitty shit?" I look at them and go, "Okay, I'm gonna tell you right now. Just go watch Hakuju Sentai Yao Ranger and watch as 4 Rangers die in a fucking episode."
Yeah.
You want to call it kitty shit? I mean, sure, they're revived the next episode, but still.
Whenever I've had people pull that argument, I feel like I've had a bit of for lack of a better term, privilege when it comes to that whole thing, because I would get the argument I would get that argument about kitty shit at me. It wasn't as frequent, and I have to wonder if part of the reason why is because they didn't want to piss off the big guy, or
Probably.
Probably.
Remember, at
I only
17,
have one.
I was 6'4" at that point, and I'd still get, "You're watching that kitty shit." They'd never do anything about it because I'd already thrown a person through a plate glass window when they tried to hurt me, but that's different.
yeah.
Oh fuck!
I only have one PSA to give all of you as a slight aside to this conversation.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not giving offerings to Truck Coon that you'll be reincarnated as a slime and not a zombie J pop star, that's your D20 to roll.
I got that right there.
My prayers to Truck Coon are, just give me a power, any power.
And not a shield.
No, I don't give a fuck if it's a shield. We already know how shield motherfucker works.
Yeah.
Well, that's your D20.
Shield OP. Your argument's invalid. Anyway, back on topic.
I'm just quick note. Anybody who says that a shield is useless, go say that to the Spartans.
Go say that to Captain America. Go say that to Naofumi.
But to bring this back around to Power/Rangers.
Yeah.
That was where a lot of that reaction came from people of, "Oh, this is what Power Rangers should be." Most of the people saying that were the people in that phase where they wanted the grim and gritty, dark bullshit and didn't realize that how mature Power Rangers actually was. So to them, this, and a lot of them were probably the same people who didn't watch Power Rangers past Mighty Morphin. That's the other thing we should probably keep in mind, is that a lot of the people saying that probably only ever saw Mighty Morphin in, the cheesiest era of its time.
Yeah.
Well, can I just say I have no desire to see Edgelord Rangers?
No, we agree. None of us do. We've done that, but that's my point.
Mm-hmm.
Is that's what people were saying.
Yeah. Now, when I would discuss with some people who were defending it, some people tried to call me out, which is already putting yourself on dangerous ground.
When he's in the right, that's a bad take.
They specifically tried to make an appeal to hypocrisy by bringing up that I have been a fan of things like Mortal Kombat, and this was the big one, Warhammer 40,000.
Wow.
Except here's the thing. There are some very strong character studies that can be made of several characters within Mortal Kombat, and especially within Warhammer 40,000. if any of you have have a bunch of hours to kill, I would definitely recommend listening to like Arch or Grimdark narrators' takes on some of the books in the Horus Heresy, because while Warhammer 40,000 does have that whole title of Grimdark,
The one who kind of pioneered and coined it, in fact, because of in the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war.
Well, to juxtapose that a little bit, you could take the Horus Heresy and then look at a work like Caiaphas Cain.
Yeah.
Or
yeah,
could look at anything by Ian Watson.
And if I can make another argument. The other argument to that is that here's the thing: is stuff like Warhammer and especially Mortal Kombat, they were designed from the get-go to be, ridiculously grim and gritty.
Yeah.
Mortal Kombat, I mean, yeah, it's silly as well. It has its silly moments. I mean, have you seen what they've been doing with the most recent game? Jesus Christ, they just put Rambo in the fucking thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's always been designed to be bloody and violent and just about it. That was kind of the whole selling point. Power Rangers, on the other hand, was never designed that way. It was designed to be cheesy and childlike and child friendly and just happy moments, always hopeful. So taking something that was designed to be a ray of hope, a light for children, and then trying to make it dark, that's not the same as something that was already dark to begin with.
It could be argued that that's the reason why. And I've talked with this with you guys in the past, but that could be argued the reason why comic books lost the youth market.
Because they kept trying to evolve. Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, of course, that wasn't the only reason, and anybody who wants the full details on that, go watch the documentary that SF Debris did. But what I want to focus on here is that emphasis on darker storytelling, which I want to make clear I am not against, but to quote you, Shades, find the gray area. Because if you end up focusing too much on that, you end up with a farce. If you go something like Power / Rangers is on the opposite end of the pendulum from something like the really saccharine cartoons of the 80s, like say the Get Along Gang or Care Bears or some shit like that.
Yeah.
I'd also like to make a bit of a corollary about the evolution of any media. While there's this want to evolve what was perceived as childish or more lighthearted, more appealing to younger audiences media to the grimmer, darker story for the shame to cover shame, essentially. There's an opposite. It seems that going in the opposite direction, taking something that is already dark, that is already quote unquote mature, and taking it to a lighter hearted aspect doesn't seem to have the same negative effect as often. Primarily because it's really easy to take something that's extremely dark and gritty and introduce a little bit of black comedy and gallows humor, and all of a sudden you get, TTS verse.
Yeah, or the fact that there. I can completely understand why Arch's favorite faction in Warhammer Fantasy is the Skaven.
Yes, the one faction that really should not be doing as well as they are.
Oh, they end up doing well because they are brilliant secretive scientists. They end up backfiring because they are brilliant secretive scientists.
Exactly.
You know what? Actually, Sayla, aka Neptune on YouTube, brings up, I think, a perfect example of how you can do lighthearted but still be mature. My Little Pony.
Yeah.
He won, in fact.
Yeah.
But like the fact that the idea was for Friendship is Magic when it first came out, it had this very bright, vibrant, colorful world with cutesy characters. And yet, its pilot episode involved a pony coming back to basically cover the world in darkness. And this is just season 1. That's not even getting into stuff like Discord, where shit just got weird.
Or
Right?
the only episode of Friendship is the episodes of Friendship is Magic I ever watched with the equality cutie marks because SJW.
Starlight.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's Starlight Glimmer, which admittedly has divided the fan base in some areas. I've heard a lot of people hate that arc, and
they seem to hate that arc, even though those 2 episodes are a scathing rebuke against the wokesters, and I love it.
Yeah,
I still have the.
But like my point being is that the point I'm trying to make is that a lot of people when they only see the superficial elements of a show.
Yes.
They see cutesy colors, they see cutesy characters. They don't see the storytelling. They're not willing to dive deeper into what's actually happening. And that is the problem. And that is where something like Power Assess Rangers tries to make fun of it. Because it is showing that just because it is super dark, super grim and gritty, that's all you want.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then it became a living Poe's Law because of it.
Now,
Pretty much.
of course, there is the. You guys are familiar with the trope that I've mentioned in the past called "Everyone remembers the stripper."
Yeah.
Which is the reason why I don't begrudge people for only looking for making conclusions at surface level, because that's what they're first going to see, and you know how it is with first impressions. What I do begrudge, however, is when someone when people make a qualitative statement, when they try and make a definitive statement on something using only that surface, because if you do that, you deserve everything that you're going to get coming to you.
On that note, boys, I'm starting to fade out, so I'm going to wish you guys a good
All right, Matt,
Maddie.
stay frosty.
All right.
Later,
Good
man.
night, everybody.
Good night.
Now, when it can now, something that I do find interesting is, like I said, with a lot of the people who ardently defended, the defense that they would raise for as passionately as they defended this work was very surface level. In a sense, and the reason I say surface level is the fact that you know how we talked about earlier how people will look at these kind of works and
Oh, God damn it!
I figure y'all be talking about Power Rangers, so I figured, what the hell?
I only have
Just
one thing to say
remember-
to that.
Just remember,
Perfect.
Bulk got his chance to be a ranger finally.
That's true.
God.
Paul
Yeah.
Schreier as one of the Hyperforce Rangers during the
I'll
table.
I'll probably end up dedicating an episode to talking about Hyperforce sometime down the line.
I love Hyperforce. It's good stuff.
Yeah.
Anyway. Back to what you were saying, Mildred.
Well, take care, guys.
Later.
Just jumped in to do that.
Yeah.
All right, Focus Skull theme, leave. Love it.
So, but what I found amusing in a very comic way was the defense about how it was the badass Rangers that we deserved was as surface levels the people who would equally say that the source material is cheesy and childish. It's very much a case of only looking at the emotive part of it. And I think the reason I find it funny is a case of not being able to practice what you preach.
Well, and to those type of arguments, I just say, good sir, I bring you the concept of lore.
And that's also to use an example from 40K. I have had people act like the main reason to enjoy a character like, say, Conrad Kurz, and Xana Doku. I think you know where this is going.
Oh, yes, I do.
Is making some sort of Batman analogy, except Kurz is a tragic figure because of the fact that like a lot of the Primarchs, he was raised to be he was genetically predisposed to be a specialist in a given thing. Since
his last name gives it all away. He's cursed.
Yeah.
The man is cursed. It's the only reason he went to Chaos in the first place.
But the thing about someone like Conrad Kurz is that he is the result of what happens when you try and have justice without context. Because he was always applying his concept of justice in a very computer-like way. I'll say.
It was indiscriminate.
Mm-hmm.
In a way that even the depiction of justice as blind is not indiscriminate. She still has her scales for a reason.
Yeah. And because of that, he was constantly trying to figure out whether or not he is just as bad as the people he was casting judgment on, and that was one of the things that drove him insane.
Yeah. If he were to be depicted as one of the many different faces of justice,
mm-hmm.
It would be blind justice without her scales and just her sword, known as retribution.
Pretty much.
I'm not going to disagree there.
And that's why I say anybody who makes the Batman comparison with Conrad Kurz is like, Kurz is not Batman. He's Azrael.
Yeah, he is very much Azrael.
And Azrael was made basically to show that basically as the counter argument to the whole is Batman too tame for the 90s.
The closest Batman we have, if we want dark, brooding parents dead and trying to actually make justice, that would have been Lionel Johnson if he didn't disappear.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. The thing is about justice, like since we're on this topic,
yeah,
I think a lot of people overlook about Batman. He still has a moral code that is very much grounded in emotion.
And that's the reason why people end up flocking to him. Now, the reason I bring this up with something like this is that with trying to apply the sort of dark mature approach with the Rangers is that, and this is something that I don't think Adi Shankar really understood when it came to this, and why I don't think he should ever. I don't think he's properly equipped to handle superheroes. Period. Is that moral center? Whether that moral center be from Bushido or something else. Like he tried to, and that ties into one thing that I want to touch on and ask where you think he went wrong on this, because one of the themes that he apparently was trying to go in was that of child soldiers.
Yeah, I was going to bring this up, actually. This is where I think me and Linkara very much agree, is that the idea was they were conscripted. They were basically forced into these wars.
But
even in the first season, it wasn't by choice. It wasn't by force that the Rangers. Dornan didn't say you are going to fight Rita whether you like it or not. No, he was like, these are the powers you can get, and they were willing to turn it down. It was only when Rita forced their hand. If she had not attacked them when she did, they would have walked away, and she probably would have conquered Earth. Mm-hmm. Or at the very least, Dornan would have found other people to do the job. The only season where you could make this argument, where Adi Shankar's argument has any merit, is in Samurai, where yes, they were conscripted, they were duty bound to join.
And I would also like, and this is where I say with Power / Rangers, the other people behind the scenes were definitely working overtime to actually make some sort of more morality play and moral gray zone within, was because the only one accusing them of being child soldiers was the man who went to the Machine Empire in the first place. And even though it's technically spoilers for a 5-year-old mini film, Rita disguised as Kimberly, she did say we were chosen. She doesn't say we were forced. And how she continues to say you were never one of us because of Rocky being an outsider, et cetera, et cetera. There's clearly someone there stating, okay, so we can't just say they were child soldiers because they weren't. They were chosen to battle, and they made the choice to follow that path. And so someone was clearly working overtime to clean up whatever fuck up Adi Shankar was making.
Well, that's the thing. If you're going with a concept that is rooted in darker social commentary, like something like child soldiers, you really have to go full bore with it. You can't half-ass it. You have to stick it on the landing, and it has to be one of the first things you establish within the world that you're trying to portray to the viewer. And just the fact that we're sitting here even debating if he stuck that means you didn't.
Yeah, I'd say when it comes to that sort of background in fiction, in popular fiction, I really think the only character that's really nailed that whole concept is Raiden. Obviously from Metal Gear.
Yeah, he was a child soldier. Raised as a child soldier. That was the whole point of his backstory. And actually, there is one character you could argue that in the original Mighty Morphin that was drafted. The only thing was he wasn't drafted by the good guys. But that argument holds very little water, because after he was broken free, he chose to stay with the Rangers and help fight. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. He could have easily walked away and said, this got too crazy for me, I'm out of here. Yeah. But no, he was ready to join.
Well, again, if you're going to go with concepts like that, I know this is like one of the go-to examples, but Kira from Hunter x Hunter. Yeah. If that's the type of concept you want to go with, what do you want to cast it in? A good light, a bad light, make the character rebellious, like, F this, I'm out. Mm-hmm. That's how you do it. Like, you make that one of the core principles of your character. And it has been 5 years since I've seen this movie, but I don't remember them sticking anything that well to where that's the thing that stuck out to me. So it fell flat. That's what I'm trying to say.
It did fall flat. Mm-hmm. And again, I'd like to stress that the only person saying they were child soldiers was the traitor, the man who left them to join the Machine Empire. As if he's almost trying to justify to himself why he joined the bad guys. In fact, half of the time he was arguing with Kimberly in this short film, mm-hmm. I always felt like he was more trying to convince himself than her. And I don't know if anybody else got that feeling.
Yeah, I definitely did, and I suppose in that regard, the whole it's Rita disguised ends up feeling like a bit of a cop out.
A shitty cop out too. I hate it. That was out of the entire film, the entire short film. That moment where all of a sudden oh my god, it's not Kimberly, it's Rita, is just like, but why? You already had an actually compelling and interesting topic and tangent with this. Why suddenly bring in one more twist, all Shyamalan-like? It's like, why? That wasn't unnecessary, in my opinion.
Yeah, the only
Maybe-
good thing that came out of that was the fact that they actually got Rita's original American actress Carla Perez to actually don this new costume and reprise her role.
Well, see,
That
actually,
was incredible.
I never got that, or at least it never came across to me as trying to justify the actions. To me, it always felt like it was either a test of resolve or trying to break the resolve, and it just couldn't figure out which it was. Which to me, it just felt awkward and weird. Maybe that's why.
I do have to wonder if when it came to the development end of things, you kind of have a clashing ideals. Like you have one camp that's very much in Shankar's vision, and then you have another camp that was not.
I would say that with how much we see back end cleanup occurring, with the small details that were clearly put in with an amount of love towards the source material, and the attempts to make things make a little more sense in certain regards, I would say that schism was likely the group of people who were not in Shankar's camp were larger.
That honestly would make sense, and given if that's really the case, it does warm my cold dead heart a bit, because it ultimately means that the people who had that whole it's childishness are really in the minority, and it does highlight something I've found fascinating being a fan of this franchise for so many years. Seeing the people who, because there seems to have been two camps, and it's a very this is arguably a very scub way to look at it. But you've had people who got it, and people who looked at it and went, I don't get it, but never a middle between those two.
Yeah.
I don't know. The work itself, and I guess this kind of is agreeing with what you said, but it felt very what's the word? Bipolar to me, where two movies that were kind of the same feel, but they're trying to do two different things, so they're pulling in opposite directions. Like it felt very disjointed. So I actually tend to adhere to the idea that there were two different camps that were trying to achieve different goals.
Yeah. Now,
and Monk, to comment on very broad way to look at it, those who got it and those who didn't. I think that the reason you don't see a middle ground there is because in the act of trying to get it, you just get it. Super Sentai, as complex as the storytelling can be, and thus that can transfer to Power Rangers in some respects. Its underpinning and underlying themes are very simple to grasp. They're things that are, because it is aimed at a younger audience, that it not extremely young, but 8 to 15 sort of range. It's made to give values that are easy to digest and comprehend and internalize. And so, and we see the same thing with other tokusatsu shows such as Kamen Rider and even Ultraman. These concepts, while they can be expressed in complex ways, still boil to a simple, easy to digest theme.
And when it comes to when it comes to what he ended up doing afterwards, because if there's any good that came out of this little project, it was some of the discussions and some of the stuff that was said afterwards. I did end up watching the vlog that JDF had done after seeing it himself. And while he did make some interesting points, I can't help but get the feeling that he didn't watch it all the way through like I did. It may have been that that he had recorded that particular vlog just after he finished. But
So his opinions were still fresh.
The thing about doing opinions just after you finish watching something is that while your opinions may be quote unquote fresh,
they aren't digested.
They aren't contested, and how many times have we had it where we end up re-examining what we said initially?
Yeah, he didn't have time to digest it and ruminate.
Yeah. And it had more. His focus in that was more to do with the message he felt it was sending. Namely, he felt it was a kind of setting a bad example approach, which if this was an official release may have had a point, but a fan film is a very self-contained experience.
I think more than anything, his opinion was based in his own image. To be honest, when I watched that particular vlog of his, remember that his image is not only as being Tommy, but he's also very straight-laced. Though he's played it down in recent years, the religious aspects of his life, etc. And so I feel a lot of that, his own self-image, went into his opinion as well, because I don't stand for some of the things we see here, therefore it's bad to me.
Which pro tip for anybody, regardless of where you get your moral center from, don't do this, because when you do this, you're not presenting your own opinions. You're presenting the avatar of something else's opinions. And nobody wants to hear that. They want to hear what you think. And I'm not doing this to get on somebody for their faith. I'm more saying that my opinion is that whole thing is supposed to be the beginning of understanding, not the end. But more on point. Now obviously, after Sankar had done this, years later, he would end up doing the Castlevania anime, which did fairly well for itself. I know some people don't like how it deviated from the story of the games. I personally don't have a problem with that. In fact,
Neither do I.
If the deviation ends up being a net positive, I'm perfectly fine with that. Since the whole idea of sticking to the source material is a notion that people have a bit too slavish an attitude of, to be honest.
It's one thing I've always said is that when you're doing a medium, when you're transferring mediums, when you're adapting from one medium to the next, there's going to be some shifts, because there is sometimes it's unavoidable, whether it be due to time, due to constraints of the medium, or anything like that.
Yeah.
What's more important than trying to adapt the source material straight is to capture the spirit, the feel of the source.
Well, I would also argue that the Castlevania anime isn't attempting to adapt any one game.
No.
It's just trying to adapt Castlevania lore in general, which allows it to play with a much wider variety of tools and a much bigger garden. If it were to, for example, try and directly adapt Symphony of the Night, there would be story beats we would expect. There would be characters we would expect, and the inclusion of other bigger named characters, characters that shouldn't show up in that era because they're dead, would be jarring. But
very much so.
that's not what's happening in the Castlevania anime. So there's nothing to worry about that there.
Mm-hmm. And I would say there's also the factor that when you look at the games, the cast involved is very minimal, and you can't, and given the amount of time you have with just doing a 12 episode season, you can't the kind of story you'd have to really stretch that story to be able to tell it with such a small cast, especially since keep in mind the first season of that anime was very clearly using Castlevania 3 as its template.
Yeah.
I think if you were going to use any of the games as a straight adaptation, the games with the highest casts are ironically the ones where Dracula's already dead. Aryosaro and Donosaro.
Mm-hmm.
They tend to have much larger casts because not only are you involved with Dracula's multiple successors, but the people in their lives that are involved with them as well.
Yeah. But I think but what I do want to highlight is that although I do not have faith that Adi Shankar has an understanding of superheroes, I do think he has an understanding of the hero's journey. And I know some people have been trying to say that the hero's journey or the monomyth is this or that or that it shouldn't be used. The hero's journey is a narrative concept that persists because it consistently works. Now that's not to say that it's the universal blueprint like the way Lucas acted it was. But
yeah, it is a starting point. It is a template that you may play with as your leisure.
Yeah.
But it is not the end all be all how your story should be.
There's also a mirror known as the Shadow's Journey, which is worth noting. But when it came to the first season of Castlevania, the hero's journey within that was Trevor getting over the amount of hatred that people have for the Belmonts and actually standing up for himself.
It was.
Which is actually something that was based on the lore of Castlevania 3, because that was the backstory, if you've ever seen that little text crawl at the beginning, was that the people feared the Belmont clan, and Trevor still stepped up to fight Dracula because they needed someone to stop him.
Yeah.
So that's actually pretty on point.
Of course, there was also the fact that they had I'd say the strongest, the thing that ends up making a strong driving force is the fact that throughout that whole thing, Dracula is an example of the Shadow's journey because of the fact that even though he went way overboard, there is at least a level of understanding about why he ended up losing his shit.
In a sense, he was a tragic villain.
Pretty much, because the one woman who he actually opened himself up to, who wasn't mired in superstition, was sacrificed because of an overzealous bishop.
Oh yeah, that asshole. Ugh.
Here's saying the first season is 4 episodes. I'm pretty sure it was a bit more than that.
No, it's 4. Seasons 2 and 3 are longer. Season 3 is the one that season 3 almost comes close.
Yeah, I think what it was because that they weren't even sure if this idea was even going to work. The season 1 was just a testing ground to see if the idea would even have any merit. And once they realized, oh shit, this is actually really popular, that's when they went all in on it. But anyway,
yeah,
we're kind of Like, we need to get this back around because there's still other aspects of Power Slash Rangers we should talk about.
All right.
Mainly the fact that for such a short film, such what is essentially just a homebrew project, this thing had a star-studded cast.
Yeah.
I mean, Katie Sackhoff, anybody?
Katie Sackhoff and James fucking Vanderbeek of all people.
Yep,
And
they got
he's
the Dawson.
playing Rocky.
They got the Dawson.
Yep.
They get
Like that. That's actually really impressive. The one thing I will knock this thing for is that unless you named the character or unless it was very clear who it was supposed to be, you had no idea. Like, there's several characters there that I honestly did not know who the fuck they were. Like, General Clank from the Machine Empire is in this thing. Divatox and Scorpion are in this thing. I don't recall seeing them at all.
They might have been like short little cameos or something.
I think I get the feeling it has more to do with the fact that their appearance therein is so far removed from how they originally looked that you'd only be able to tell if you were outright told so.
Yeah, which obviously they didn't have the time to do that. I mean, this is only a 15-minute short film. They didn't have time to add all that in. Some characters weren't that hard to figure out. Like, when you see Bulk and Skull, they make it clear it's Bulk and fucking Skull.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course, they also turned Bulk and Skull into, much worse people than they were in the actual series.
This is another thing where you can tell this was probably Shenkar's doing here because...
No, this was absolutely Shenkar's doing at this point.
Yeah, because we know this takes place around the time of Zeo. Like, that much is made very fucking clear because we've got the Machine Empire involved. But, and maybe even beyond that, because we see, again, Divatox is involved, even though it's very brief to see her there. Like, this is an alternate timeline to that. This clearly ignores the development of Bulk and Skull in the main series, because even by the end of Mighty Morphin, by the end of Season 3, they are far from the asshole bullies they originally started out as. But in this short film, they are back to being bullies, just taken to the logical extreme, as they are now
white trash meth heads.
White trash meth heads, yeah. Like, the Bulk and Skull we knew, even by the end of Season 3, would have never gone down this route. Not to mention everything that happened up till in space.
They would have been absolutely friggin' disgusted.
Bulk and Skull, I think by Season 3, wasn't Bulk a security guard at that point?
Yeah, they were already cops by Season 3.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
They were cops by Season 3. So this is literally the exact opposite route that they took in the main series.
And it does go back to that whole thing of Shankar only understanding the basal parts of what he was satirizing, which is I'd say is one of the most damning things that you can say with a attempt at satire, because I'll use a counterbalance example of something that is a out and out satire, is an out and out parody, and that is Judge Dredd.
Yeah,
Dredd is meant to be a parody of the whole cop on the edge concept, and Wagner was very concerned when people started taking Dredd unironically, which is why we got comics like America.
Of course, now no one can ever take Dredd seriously ever again because, well, I mean, not entirely true, but everybody remembers, I am the law!
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't talk about Stallone Dredd.
Look, just
I
watch
don't
the
know
Carl
about
Urban
We talk about it ironically.
Yeah.
We do.
Look, I'll give Stallone a little bit of slack on that, because even he admitted that was a missed opportunity.
Yeah.
At the very least, he admitted that.
But at the same time, just watch the Carl Urban Dread and don't look back.
That's
And,
such a
oh,
good
I
movie,
fucking
too.
and
That's such a good movie.
And you all can thank me later in cash.
To be fair, though,
Mhm.
despite the cheesiness of the Stallone film, it did get that point correct in that Stallone's Dread was a cop on the edge taken to the extreme.
Yeah.
They got that right. It's just everything else around it just kind of flopped.
There were definitely some parts of that understanding that they kind of missed the mark on. But the biggest failing of that Stallone Dread was playing the concept straight.
Too straight.
Yeah. Now the reason why I bring up Judge Dredd in 2008 and 2000 AD is because Wagner and Company had already written a lot of detective fiction up to that point. They understood the concept of the cop on the edge, or the detective on the outs from his peers. And because of that, they were able to understand where to bend the rules and where to break them. Shankar, on the other hand, did not have a strong enough understanding of the rules compared to the work that he would do later. And that is the key point. You have to understand the rules before you can break them. This is why even though I'm never going to run it, I enjoy reading something like Order of the Stick or Hackmaster, things that are designed to be parodies of D&D.
Yeah, actually, I can give an example of how they could have done this right. And it's probably one of those famous examples. If you're going to do something that you have no understanding of, you have to do the research.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm pretty sure some of you guys might know where I'm going with this.
Oh.
Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, hell yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
The director of that movie had no knowledge of Star Trek going into
Not the director, the producer.
Or the producer. Had no understanding of Star Trek going into the film. But he was tapped because he was a great producer. But instead of just saying, okay, here's my vision, no. He went back, looked through the entire original series, picked out, understood the lore, understood how the series worked, and they used that along with the elements he chose to create the movie, which is why Star Trek II is regarded as one of the best in the franchise.
Yep.
That's what Shankar should have done with Power/Rangers. If he was going to get involved in this, he should have made sure to understand the series fully. Even if it was just Mighty Morphin, watching that all the way through would have given him at least some understanding of how the series worked. Because by the end of season 3, Power Rangers had established a lot of its core elements into how to make the franchise a success.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone remembers season 1 because it was the one that became a phenomenon.
Mm-hmm.
But season 3 is where it really started to establish what Power Rangers is.
Yep.
I think,
and that kind of research would have done wonders for this satire.
I think the problem there, though, is that this whole short film with the fans in the background trying to correct as much of Adi Shankar's influence as possible, Adi Shankar was never going to do that research. As derisive as he was in his interview, that was evident. And he's also kind of a self-absorbed prick. I'm being
made that pretty clear from what I've seen.
I'm being generous there.
It's one of those cases. You know how there are some people who are better fits working on their own IPs than working on other people's IPs.
I mean, if you look at most of Adi Shankar's bootleg universe, he doesn't understand half the properties he has.
Yeah, and I have seen it. I'd say the only thing from his bootleg universe that I've seen where I think he does have a better understanding was Dirty Laundry.
Yeah, the Punisher. But I mean, it's let's be honest, the Punisher is already a darker, more mature type of storyline, technically.
Yeah.
And so it already appeals to his proclivities. It already appeals to his bias. So of course he's gonna have a better understanding because it's something he'll actually consume.
Yeah. And can anybody think of an example of, because like we opened up with him with the notion that he was saying that that he was trying to take a childish or childlike IP and do a darker spin. I'd like to go around and ask can anybody think of an example of this sort of concept and doing it properly?
There are a couple, and it's not necessarily based in television or even in tokusatsu, but it's also somewhat of a natural progression in certain cases with certain video game series. Ratchet and Clank technically went from something really, really goofy and childish to something a little more serious, especially when they get stuck in the suits in the game where they're forced to up your arsenal. Is what I'm talking about. Where they're forced to play in those gladiator games or die. But then it goes right back around the loop again to goofy. It always tried to keep the root in the mix, even as it got darker and darker, and then came back around again. Technically, Jack and Daxter as well. Jack 1, the precursor, it was silly, and it was a puzzle platformer, and then we get Jack 2 and 3, which are open world platformer shooting games, and much darker, but still done in a natural progression. And that's the big thing. It needs to be almost a progression. You can't just take a source material and then flip it from the source. There needs to be an explanation about how it got there, which is a big part of where Power Slash Rangers fails. It just takes the premise of Mighty Morphin, flips it on its head, and says, "Okay, well, this is how it always was as an alternate universe," without ever giving a progression of, well, why was the universe that bad to begin with? If they gave us a plausible source for why things were that bad in the first place, and how this would have made it easier for the bad guys to win, why Bulk and Skull never develop as people, why all of a sudden Zack is a adrenaline junkie obsessed with the fighting, why Billy decides to start making weapons, which is definitely not Billy. That's another thing. He didn't get the cast. He just did not get the cast at all.
No.
He didn't get their characters at all.
I think another thing we have to do, another thing that I think I want to do with this is compare it to when the actual Power Rangers reboot movie in 2 years later in 2017, and compare how it did a more mature Power Rangers. It was also a lot more mature, a little darker, maybe, but not grim dark. It took the concepts of Power Rangers, understood what it was, and added a mature spin. It made the Rangers more human, more real, compared to the goody goods they were in the original series. Because let's be honest, they were straight up goody goods.
Yeah,
They were.
The reboot made them a lot more rebellious. They were teenagers by every sense of the word.
Yeah,
the goody goods who were all martial arts masters, I might add.
Yeah. Whereas
that was completely unrealistic.
Yeah. Like they had to stretch for Billy for certain on that regard. But in the reboot, in the 2017 movie, you know, they went different directions. They made Billy in that movie a autistic savant. He was smart, but he was also autistic. He didn't get emotions very well. You know, you had Kimberly, who was a lot more rebellious of a teenager. She wasn't a gymnast, you know, Valley Girls. She was just a rebellious teenage girl. You had Trini, who was possibly lesbian, even trying to keep her secrets. Like, it's again nothing outright stated, but very heavily implied. Zach was even the.
I was going to say, not to mention, almost none of them actually knew any formal form of fighting.
No.
They had to train inside the base to even learn how to fight.
Which gave me the one line that made me crack up the whole. Oh, it's shit. What's the worry about? It's just a hologram. Smack.
Exactly.
Solid light still hurts.
Yeah, solid light hologram.
Speaking of
Grad.
one of the things I actually want to mention about the reboot movie is like, I like how they did Zach in the movie. It's like one of the things that was actually cut from the movie was that Zach was actually trying to become a YouTube star to raise money for his mom because she was really sick. Like, yikes.
Pretty much, and I will freely admit that when I walked out of the thing, and I'm pretty sure I wasn't the only one doing this, I ended up making Breakfast Club jokes because I'm pretty sure if I were to meet the writer, they'd probably outright admit that they were using the Breakfast Club as a template, and I'm not holding that against them. I mean, if you're gonna steal, you may as well steal from the best.
Yeah. And they used it well. It established how all these guys knew each other. You know, again, you look back at the original series, they just all happened to hang out at the same juice bar. They were all already really good friends. Here, no, these guys hardly knew each other. They just happened to meet each other in detention, and next thing you know, they all just happened to be at the same place at the same time to come across, Zordon's ship.
Yeah. Plus, during this whole thing, it's not like they have they didn't have Zordon being all that open, which lends theory to that running meme that's been going on for over 20 years that Zordon is an asshole.
Here they pretty much made him an asshole because he was like, "You must gain these powers so that I can be free," and it's only after one of them is pretty much dead that he's like, "Use the power to save him."
It didn't, and I was kind of iffy about how Alpha's redesign worked, but one, I didn't have to deal with impediments, and two, don't fuck around with that guy.
No.
Yeah, Alpha will fuck your shit up from that movie.
Yeah, but to bring back to my point here is that at the end of the day, it was a more mature Power Rangers because it told a mature story. Darker, sure, but not grim dark. It was just mature because it gave the characters character. And that's what we wanted. But Power / Rangers, it just went and took the original characters, their original personalities, and just threw them into this grimdark scenario where the machines have taken over the world. And basically, they had a traitor thanks to Rocky, which they used it. They used the framing device to tell kind of situations that was never a thing in the original. Jason and Kimberly getting married. When the fuck did that be a thing?
That's the other thing. Now, if somebody wanted to do a grimdark telling, on paper, am not against that. But the thing is, you can't make that clear in, for all intents and purposes, the second act. You need to make something like that clear from the get-go. And there's multiple ways to do it, and it's been done elsewhere. But it needs to be made clear very on that kind of tone. There's a reason why the overture is the most important part of an opera. And I know bringing up operas might be a bit pretentious when it comes to this sort of subject matter, but I do think it applies. you do need to. The purpose of an overture is to establish the scene and establish the tone of the opera that you're going to be watching. Because obviously, a opera can take many different forms, sometimes in the span of a single show, and that tone needs to be established, or at the very least, an expectation of tone, because Lord knows we've seen cases where the tone is one thing and then flips on its head in the next act.
And Power Slash Rangers did attempt, and I want to stress attempt, to do that in that very brief opening scene where we see the Rangers in combat, but it didn't do enough to establish the overall setup. It just showed, oh, here's the Rangers fighting, and it was a lot more, extreme compared to what we're used to seeing, but it didn't establish the overall tone going into the second act that we didn't get the first act for.
Yeah.
I would say that what Adi Shankar was doing there was trying to establish an in medias res beginning. Is the thing.
In medias res was the worst move that you could make.
Worst move he could have made for something short. Yes, if he had decided to make it feature length, for whatever reason he wouldn't have. But if he had, in medias res can work because it gives you time to build upon that middle opening you just gave everybody.
It creates this setup of like, oh, what the hell happened here, and then you go
back.
How
did you get to this point? Then go back.
Yeah, but here he didn't have enough time to do that, and their attempts to do so felt rushed. It's like, whoa, what? All this shit happening all at once in the early scenes, and only having enough time to really show what happened to a couple of the characters wasn't enough. Like Billy, like we said earlier, Billy's creating his own company and teaming up with Lockheed Martin to create weapons. Like, that's something you need to establish.
Yeah,
how did that happen? What led us to that point?
Yeah, and why would Billy do something so out of character? The really big thing is that what that opening shot establishes you for is, there's some grim and some dark, but it feels more like it's going to be a war movie than what it was. Because they look like they're in trenches. They look like they're in the midst of battle. So it feels more like you're going to be doing a Black Hawk Down or a Saving Private Ryan, rather than the I don't even know what to compare it to at this point.
Which on paper I wouldn't be opposed to, but you got to stick to that. And hey, if somebody could pull that off, then maybe we could show that, point to that footage and say, "Suck it, Toei." I'm doing that simply to show that to roast the whole idea of a rider war, because that kind of missed opportunity will always be stuck in my craw.
No, we had a rider war. It was a really good rider war too. It only happened in a single season though.
Yeah.
Bujin Gaim, anybody?
Okay, fine. I'll give you that one. I'm still not letting go of about my beef about the second generation drivers in Gaim, which was why I did that Zangetsu meme. I had told you about that whole thing, Shades. Like, why the fuck is that guy using a bow?
Anyway.
Yeah. Anyway.
But
I'm gonna call it quits here tonight, guys.
All right, Akira.
All right.
Stay frosty.
Later, dude.
Akira.
But even with all of this, I can say that 5 years later, re-examining Power Slash Rangers, I don't hate it the way I did 5 years ago. But at the same time, I would be hard pressed to say I like what I saw, especially since in the years since we have seen people take the idea of doing a darker approach with this IP and actually running with it better. Now, whether or not that's as a result of this particular short film, I honestly don't have the capacity to answer that question. but I do think that it should be held as a warning about what happens when you try and do satire without understanding what you're satirizing. And I know it was just a case of that was the IP that he just happened to pick for this particular project. But that alone is not enough to absolve, because if he had done everything that he did with this short film but used a different IP, we would end up having the exact same problems.
Yeah, and I would say that I enjoy watching it. It's entertaining. There are definitely issues that need to be addressed, but I like the choreography. I like the effects. Some of those effects are really good too. Like you said, basically production level special effects. That's some fantastic stuff. The cast felt good. They even though the characters they were portraying were no longer the characters that we knew, the characters that they were portraying were portrayed believably. And those are all things that I feel should be pointed out and lauded. The bad execution for the story, the tonal shift, the attempt to satirize and fail, thus becoming a Poe, those are all things that need to be pointed out as failures and what to avoid, or at least what to execute better should you try to do a similar project. Can I just say, though, my favorite part of the choreography is where Zach throws his helmet at one of the Korean gangsters and then puts it on that way. That's my favorite moment in that entire thing.
That was nice. I will mention the bits they did with Zach in Power Slash Rangers was hilarious. I could not
hip hop
stop
keto.
I could not stop laughing of how they turned hip hop keto into a fucking Richard Simmons bit.
Oh, that was so good.
That was funny.
To be found in this, it's mired in all of that grim, dark bullshit that it just completely drowns it out.
Yeah.
That's why I said there are definitely facets that should be exemplified. And those I believe the three biggest facets there are the special effects, the choreography, and the actors. Because the actors did an amazing job acting, even if the material they were given was poor material. And so
it's like I've always said, never blame the actors for this stuff, because you have Kate Sackhoff, James Van Der Beek, Russell Bain. There's some really good actors in this. It's just they were given, if you're given shit writing, you could be the best actor in the world. You're still going to turn into shit performance. But even then, they made this work. It's just what they had to work with was, shit.
And
there's no better way to put it.
Yeah. And and I think to that particular end, I think the ultimate counter argument when it comes to the notion of doing a darker take is how the most popular arc for the Boom Studios comics, and this is something that we probably will get into in a future episode of Geekwatch, was Shattered Grid, and how that.
Not wait for that.
Now, what's really funny is JDF when Power Slash Rangers first came down. Was like he said I was even approached to play Tommy, but I didn't want to because it's not something I want to partake in. Immediately jumped on to actually portraying himself for the Shattered Grid commercial, which
I freaking love that commercial.
That commercial is fantastic. Yeah, JDF being who he is, he's a good actor. So pulling off an even eviler version of an evil character he already played was probably not hard for him.
Yeah.
And so my only complaint there is it's kind of hypocritical of him, because Shattered Grid is very, very dark and portrays a lot of things very very gray. There's not a lot of black and white in Shattered Grid. There's a lot of gray.
And I think I do have to wonder if the reason he was more willing on that one is because one, he probably wasn't told all of the story that was involved, and two, even with all that goes on, it wasn't stretching too far over the line.
Oh, and I think 3, it was him, so he wanted to be him.
Yeah.
It was just another. They want me to portray me. Okay, I can do that.
Mm-hmm. At least that's been my take on the matter. Now, it could be argued that as long as Adi Shankar can have potential to write and direct good material. However, I do feel that he is somebody who is ultimately going to be holding himself back the longer that he focuses on established IP, let's say. Even though obviously he's going to be involved with Blood of Zeus, he's still working on somebody else. He's still working on other people's IP. It's just that this IP happens to be mythological figures, which while that may give a whole lot of leeway, at the same time, it is walking in somebody else's shoes.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think he'll ever reach his full potential until he establishes his own IP. Whether or not that ends up being good or bad, that's another matter entirely. But what I'm waiting to see from him is to spread his wings, and I'm not sure if he's willing to just yet. I think doing stuff like Bootleg Universe and Power / Rangers and all of that, I honestly can't help but wonder if it's hindered him more than anything else. Like it's treated as a comfort zone.
That's a possibility. I can see that.
Yeah.
And it's not something that I mean in a negative sense, because I don't think that he's some sort of hack. Sorry, Apollo. I merely think that that in this in the way he does things, he has gotten himself a little bit too comfortable with the idea that he doesn't have to create a sandbox himself, and because of that, he's only going to be able to do so much. And I realize it's egotistical to bring out my own shit, but you look at what I tried to do with Ryder.
Mm-hmm.
I do not consider myself a 100% success in what I was trying to do, but I was trying to do things with the sandbox I was given that Toei doesn't have the ability to do.
I'd also like to expand upon that and say that because he has the Bootleg Universe, and does seem to be somewhat of a comfort area for him, it relegates him to the status of a frog in the well. In that he can't see more of the world and thus compare himself to it and lose a bit of the ego he has. I feel that part of the reason he didn't really research, especially in Power / Rangers, was ego. He in the interview, he just derisively calls it childish content and leaves it at that. Mm-hmm. He doesn't attempt at all to actually engage and understand, and that is at its core ego. If he toned that back, brought it back, took some time to look at the source material and understand it, any of the source material that he works with. First of all, that would expand Bootleg Universe a little further, and it might also give him the confidence to go after something original.
Mm-hmm.
So ultimately, I think he's protecting his ego, whether consciously or unconsciously, I can't know for sure.
Yeah, I can it's something I can definitely see. And that's why until he now Sayla is making the comparison to a one-trick pony. I don't necessarily think that he has one trick the way certain other writers do. I do think that he is under a glass ceiling.
Yeah, I can.
And it's one that because of the whole ego thing, he's not going to be able to break, even though he has the tools to do it. And I know some people might argue that Blood of Zeus is him attempting to do an original IP.
It's not.
He is still following a lot of the beats that we see in Greek myth. Least of which being, as I mentioned before, the fact that we have yet another son of Zeus.
Cue the same joke made at the very beginning of the episode.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Now, do I think somebody's going to do I think somebody's going to try again eventually with this whole notion of a grimdark Sentai? I do think that eventually somebody will, but I have a sneaking suspicion that the person who does that will be doing it from a more fan perspective, and because of that, they'll have a better shot at it.
Yeah.
'Cause I can already think of ways that I'd probably do it, like somebody finding old tech.
I think I can already think of ways that I would do it too. I mean, I'm sure all of us have a specific thread in mind of if we wanted to make the original MMPR even a little darker, a little more grim. Not necessarily for grimness' sake, but just because we want to make an interesting take on it. I'm sure all of us have a method in mind as to how to achieve that. Even I mean, even I have written fan fiction in the past.
Hey, no shame, no blame.
I still write fan fiction now. What are you talking about? No shame, no blame, indeed.
But that is something for other people to take that torch. Although, given the backlash of this, I have a suspicion that they'll be a little not less but more hesitant to do so, because they don't want the stink, shall I say?
Yeah, that comparison's never gonna go away. Even years down the road, someone's gonna do it, and there are gonna be a few people who remember this, and they're going to compare it.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're gonna do it, you're gonna be walking a very fine line.
Even if the comparison is unfair, the accusation is going to be enough.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Do you know what I find to be one of the saddest things about this? The fact that there are still people unwilling to discard the shame of liking Power Rangers, to the point that even just a few weeks ago on the Power/Rangers original video, the one that isn't reshared everywhere, but the one on the actual Bootleg Universe channel, still receiving comments like, "Oh man, it's 2020. Why don't we have a Power Rangers like this? We deserve this."
Oh, Jesus.
They are still commenting like that to this day.
I do want to go into that whole. The one thing when it comes to that particular argument that I do think we should touch on is the notion of deserve. Why do you suppose people think that that concept alone is something that we deserve? Like, when I think about deserving something, I think about something that is earned.
As you are.
Some of these people, and this stems back to the whole, they want to cover up the shame of liking something childish and revitalize it as something grimmer and darker because it's more mature that way and thus more suitable for adults. And then of course we go through the C.S. Lewis quote all over again. They believe they deserve it because they've been such staunch fans for so long, and they deserve something that isn't for children anymore.
Yeah.
And it's like, guys, it's for all ages. Just go watch more Power Rangers.
I have to wonder if it's a consequence of wanting something that they grew up with to quote unquote grow up with them.
A lot of the comments do say that. God, I had it open just seconds ago. One of the comments from just like 6 months ago was we should have a Power Rangers that grows up alongside us or something along that. I was like, nah, dude, come on,
no,
please stop.
And the problem with that is that has happened. They're just not willing to see it. Between the 2017 movie and the Boom Studios comics, that's exactly what we got. But they want more than that.
I'd say it's less of a case of wanting more than that, and more of that it doesn't match the fantasy.
Yeah. 5 months ago, old shows that we grew up with should have adult versions for us.
That is what we call entitlement, and we don't tolerate that shit around here.
No, we don't.
I love how blood came out of them instead of sparks. It's like, have you ever watched any Power Rangers when they demorph? Yeah, they're cut up and stuff, brah.
Even Sentai.
Never mind the fact that that one of my favorite kind of images in a lot of tokusatsu is the damaged helmet.
Oh, the broken helmet. Yeah.
Someone. Okay, 6 months ago, someone who didn't realize this. Netflix should hire this guy to make this a thing. Someone responds to him. Someone responds, he's busy on their Castlevania show, and Saban would never allow a Power Rangers show or movie like this.
Well, jokes. Wait, that was said 6 months ago? Jokes.
No, the one with Saban was said 2 months ago.
Shades, do you have the Shawn Michaels button?
Oh, give me a second. Give me a second. Here we go.
Shades, I was going to tell you save the button for the comment I just found from a month ago.
Oh, God.
Man, I know they just made a more adult comic for the Rangers, expanding their universe, but this is great, and having Rocky, probably the least liked Ranger, be the villain and not being one of them is badass.
Here, I got you covered.
Oh, wait, you serious? Let me laugh even harder.
Oh, Bender, I
love you. Thank you, Bender.
When I made the comment that people defending this passionately are just as childish as the people they're deriding.
You didn't know it was just true?
It really is a burden being right all the time.
So here's another one. Someone comparing this to the 2017 movie, when a 15-minute fake film is better than a feature-length movie. Here's one. And here's my favorite one. This one makes me want to reach through the screen and slap this person.
Oh, I've got a button ready for you then.
Things that happened after Power/Rangers. Call of Duty references. We Can See Blood. Cyberpunk music. I want to reach through and throttle this person dead.
Jesus.
Oh,
Wait,
Oh, man, you're such a loser, dude. Oh shit! Oh shit! Wait.
Yeah. Yeah,
See-
I'm done reading. I'm done reading these now. I'm sorry. This is
Um,
killing
What
me.
did I
My
see
brain,
take
my
down
brain
there?
cells.
Yeah. I need those brain cells for when I get back at you for that bad joke earlier tonight.
Oh yes. You're gonna try and get back at me. I see.
Um,
I think it's a case of get in line.
Yep. Get in line, Monk. I get to use this against you for once.
Oh,
although I have to ask, is that line longer or shorter than the people who are in line to kick guys' ass?
I'm going to have to say that the line is just as long, only because the line is extended by people who want to buy more things to kick guys' ass with.
Fair enough.
Wouldn't that be a separate line?
No, it's all one line to meet me. To meet me to either try and hurt me or buy stuff, you got to come through the same door.
Oh,
It
well, fuck
makes
you
it makes it easier for me. Makes it easier for me.
Mm-hmm. But with all
also, Leggy has spoken in the chat. I just noticed what you said. Poor girl. Oh, anyway.
Sayla, as far as the whole concept about Call of Duty being overrated, I referred to you to last week's discussion. I tackled that problem. And as far as bringing up Doctor Who, despite some questionable decisions, I would rather not think about some of those decisions right now. So,
Yeah. Do we need to discuss the last series?
put your motherfucking head back down.
We love you, girl, but just no, don't go there.
No.
But with that said, I think that's going to do it for this particular week of Geekwatch. Next time, obviously, we'll be tackling something a little different, something that is not going to be Tokusatsu related, but is something I think some of you will get a kick out of, because obviously there's always going to be some bits of fun, excitement, and insanity here in the watch. And of course, I should note that now a couple notes. Not next week, but the week after, I will not be doing Geekwatch because I'm going to be out of town still.
Yeah.
And I don't exactly relish the idea of setting up all my stuff from a hotel room.
Not to mention
Neither
hotel
would
Wi-Fi.
we.
Yeah, and hotel Wi-Fi is notoriously terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it was one thing when Shays did a one-off cam stream during MetroCon that one year, but I don't really do webcam streams. Plus my laptop's webcam doesn't want to work, so that's out. But there will be a Geekwatch next week, and aside from the 24th and the 25th, I will be having at least one interview each of those days. There's only one day that I've got up till the 29th that I'm doing double duty, and that's on Tuesday. And that was simply because of time zone hell. Since I can't do an evening show with somebody who's all the way out in Singapore.
No.
Yeah, that's
It
a
will
limitation.
be like morning, afternoon, at least. Yeah, no.
Mm-hmm. So the plan that I have for this week is as follows. Monday, I'm gonna have Jacob DC Ross back on the show since he's doing a follow up to his Wanderer game book.
Nice.
Tuesday, I'll have Christopher Svensson in the morning, and then later on that later on that night, I will have King Naval himself coming back, i.e., Mark Kern.
Mm-hmm. Gotta praise the belly.
Yeah. We'll probably spend the whole time arguing about Mecha and having him answer for the crime of putting over heavy gear over Mechton Zeta.
I saw that yesterday. It was like, okay.
Wednesday, I'll have the developers of Shattered Tabletop Games on to talk about their work. Thursday, I will have Philip T. Adams. I was supposed to have this last week, but he had to push it forward a week. And we'll be talking about the adventure system. Friday, I will have Bonfire Productions, who actually contacted me first.
Oh, nice!
to talk, because if you recall, back on the Gazette, I talked about the Alhami Sky campaign setting that's currently being crowdfunded.
Yeah.
Monday, I will have Drew, Monday of next week. I will have Drew Ish to talk about his comic Captain Love, spelled Luv. Tuesday, if everything goes as planned, I will have Powell Yaros, the creator of Witchfinder Legends, and I had to do this one early because he's all the way out in Poland.
Oh.
1 week from Wednesday, I'll be having Steve Grod on. One of my favorite 5e developers, because he's the guy behind Low Fantasy Gaming.
How many Gorilla Grodd jokes does he get?
I haven't made any Gorilla Grodd jokes at him yet.
No. He means in general due to his last name.
Yeah.
I haven't made that many yet. There just hasn't been the opportunity. Plus, I'm not gonna make too many jokes about when it comes to him, because he's in Australia and he's got enough to deal with as it is with Australian wildlife.
Gorilla Grodd's a super genius.
Yeah. And next Thursday, the day before I head out, I'm going to be interviewing the developers of the Clash of Armies deck building game, which will be the first time I've had somebody from Argentina on the show. So it's not just Brazil and Colombia that I'm reaching into on the South American end of things.
No.
Take a note, woke scolds. This is how you actually diversify.
Mm-hmm. Neptune, for what it's worth, I have talked about Mecha a few. Yeah, I have talked about Mecha a few times on this channel, including reviewing Lancer a few months ago.
Monk, do you realize Sailor is going to become the next misanthropic one?
Yeah, I was going to say, I had that thought in the back of my mind. Oh wait, yeah, Sailor, female misanthropic. Oh shit.
And this is a bad thing. Why?
It's not. I'm just making the observation.
I made the observation first, but still.
Look, it's important to play to your audience.
That's true.
And of course, on the 24th and the 25th, there's Monastery Gazette and Geekwatch, as you all would expect. So, even though it's getting colder up here, the Monastery and Geekwatch are still going to be on fire. Not literally, of course. Otherwise we'd have to call the #1 firefighting idiot.
Yeah! Yeah, in case you don't know, we watched Promare last night. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it was awesome.
Yes, we know.
Quick Conquest in the works.
No spoilers.
Quick Conquest in the Anime Takeover Quick Conquest is already written for it.
Yep.
Promare's good too. It's really good.
But so Sayla, as far as your first time here, welcome to where the real insanity happens.
Hell, she's
I've been telling you this forever, and nobody listens to me.
But all of that is gonna be what we'll be looking forward to next time around. In the meantime, I want to thank everybody for taking the time out of their schedule to enjoy the insanity. And there's going to be more insanity where that came from, as there always is here. But until then, on behalf of the good brothers present and not present, my name is Mildra. I am your gaming monk, and